URA meeting minutes of April 18th, 2016.
Thank you. Mr. Teeter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Now we'll move into presentations. I'd like to invite the Community Development Director, Chris Kramer, forward to make the presentation. The board may take action on these resolutions after we're done. Chris, go right ahead.
Chairman Ford, members of the board, thank you for your patience tonight. We have an interesting meeting ahead of us. This is not a very typical meeting for the URA board tonight. We have a couple of outside presenters. We're going to be taking some votes in the middle of the meeting, and so it's going to be a little atypical. You can see the agenda here. We are, as a result of House Bill 1348, we are going to have to do some housekeeping work to allow 2 new board members to join you tonight. And once that occurs, then we'll have a real slight orientation about the URA roles and responsibilities, and then wrap it up with a discussion about the most active project within the URA, which is the Mile High Greyhound Park project. So, as I mentioned, we do need to do some housekeeping first to allow 2 new board members to join you. Per House Bill 1348, URA boards across the state, they're not just picking on Commerce City, across the state, they're required to add 3 seats from designated spots. The 1 seat is coming from special districts, and that has to be done by agreement of all the taxing districts. The second is by county designation, and the third is coming from the school district, and that has to be agreement by all the taxing districts or all the school districts. The state legislation contemplates that this may create an even number of seats, so it does address that an extra seat, an odd number of votes that might be required, could be allocated to an extra seat appointed by the mayor. So the first step to accomplish these tasks is to, first of all, address the bylaws. Currently, the bylaws outline the total number of seats on the Urban Renewal Authority Board, and that needs to be amended to allow for these extra seats. So, right out of the gate, staff is recommending that the URA approve the resolution amending the bylaws, doing a couple of things. First is creating the 3 additional seats plus the additional community seat as outlined in 1348, and then a few other structural issues relating to officers, staff, meetings, etc. And we can certainly go into that in further detail if you need to. But staff is recommending approval of those bylaw amendments.
You want us to handle that now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm open for a motion. Mr. Teeter?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this new procedure here with 13 House Bills 15-1348, the seats for the URA.
Thank you. Mr. Amador?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution amending the bylaws to allow the additional seats. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried.
So next up, we actually need to go through the process of seating the extra board seats. So just to give the board a little background about how we got here tonight. From May 11th to June 5th, we did research on special district lists of those that might be impacted citywide. In June, we sent letters to all potential special districts, school districts, and the county outlining the process. On August 11th, we received notification from Adams County School District regarding their appointment of board member Archuleta. As background, we did also take the extra precaution of reaching out to 27J, and they did provide us with an email indicating they support this appointment as well. So we are covered there. In August, we received also from Adams County the appointment of District 2 Commissioner, Commissioner Tedesco. To date, we have still not received an appointment from the special districts, that first seat we mentioned earlier. And according to House Bill 1348, that will need to remain open until it's appointed by a district agreement among those parties. So because right now we currently have an odd number of seats, staff is recommending that we are not going to fill the last community seat until we have a special district seat at the same time. So we are not recommending that we appoint or accept the appointments for either of those 2 seats tonight. So instead, staff is recommending, and this will be another vote that we'll do now, staff is recommending that the URA Board approve the resolutions accepting the appointments for both Adams County and Adams County School District 14. And then, again, when we receive the final commissioner appointment from the special districts, we can then begin the city process for finding a final seat.
Thank you. All right, I'm moving for a motion to appoint Timmy Archuleta and Commissioner Chaz Tedesco to the Urban Renewal Authority. Mr. Bullock.
So move.
Mr. Amador.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to make those appointments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried.
So at this point,
I'd like to invite the new
yes.
members to please come forward and take your seats up here alongside of the rest of the directors for the Urban Renewal Authority.
you can slide it around either way.
What are we going to do if we get 3? Well, you lucked out, huh?
Get up and say your hellos. I know. All right, and from my understanding, Mr. McBroom, we will be coming up with a location and seats for everybody. You want to let everybody know what that process is looking like right now?
We can do that slide now.
Well, that's
all right.
that's part of our goal tonight is to. We can certainly appreciate that if you're an incoming board member, you don't want to attend Commerce City URA board meetings at the conclusion of city council meetings, which is when we've normally had them. So an alternative meeting schedule seems to make some sense, and perhaps a different location where you can all more comfortably sit around the same table. The dais wasn't intended for this many folks. We could make it work on a short-term basis. Now, if you would prefer to meet here, that works perfectly fine as well, but another option would be to find another location where you might have a little bit more elbow room.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Mr. Kramer, you want to continue?
Yeah, actually, since we're talking about this was a slide later in the presentation, but we might as well get some feedback. If there's no vote needed, I think staff is just trying to get some direction, mostly about a meeting night, because that will allow us to go research potential rooms or spaces that we can use. And again, this is an opportunity for a space, but as Mr. McBroom said, it's not designed for 11, and it's only going to be exacerbated when we get 2 more. So staff would welcome any input, any of the board, and when I say any of the board, that means any of the board's ideas about meeting times and days.
Mr. McEldowney.
No thoughts about day. Obviously, we need to accommodate others, but I do think time is an important one. With our tradition of hosting these URA meetings at the end of council meetings, and especially given the types of conversations that we've had around the Mile High Greyhound Park project, I think an earlier time would be beneficial not only for our partners in this matter, but the fact that we oftentimes need to bring other parties into the conversation, and the unpredictable timing of that at the end of a meeting doesn't make for the most ideal of conversation environments. I mean, I think we've had a couple with our partner here that have been well into the wee hours, and that's not ideal for any of us. So in the spirit of good decision-making and clear-headedness, I would look for an earlier time. Obviously, I know we've got lots of conflicts throughout the week, but maybe, and again, the unpredictable nature, I think, of when a URE meeting is warranted makes it difficult as well. I know we've tried in the past to do executive sessions, for example, at the beginning of council meetings. It may make sense to try and use that sort of first hour, or maybe we go a little earlier, and in the case of a URA meeting being needed, maybe it's a 5:30 start or something, but try to not completely push out a council meeting, but maybe we use that sort of early window. I know 5:30 can be difficult, and I was a few minutes late tonight trying to get out of work and get here, but something along those lines, right? I think meeting earlier, maybe trying to look a little earlier start on a Monday night, but those are just some thoughts to consider.
Great. Anyone else? Mr. Teeter.
Yes, is this something that's going to have to be also on Channel 8 or viewed, or can we have it someplace else?
They are public meetings, and so to the extent we have filmed them in the past, mostly that's because they're on the same night that we have meetings in here, so it's available to be filmed. We don't have a URA policy on filming them, but it certainly promotes transparency to the extent they can be filmed.
Correct. Anyone else? Mr. Amador.
So I like the suggestion that Jason came up with as far as trying to meet earlier before a council meeting on the Mondays, and I know that the meetings for the Adams County Commissioners are on a separate day, so that might make sense. The venue itself it's a little crowding, but that's okay, I don't mind. But when we do get multiple members outside of this, I see it a little more challenging. So maybe as a suggestion, we could have staff look at maybe the venues that we have either close to here, and I'm thinking maybe the rec center or something like that. It might not be ideal, or maybe the MNC where we have a bigger boardroom where we can set it up and then allow for maybe enough time for us to at least travel back to City Hall. So someplace, I would say local. I was thinking in my mind Buffalo Run to begin with, but maybe that isn't the best if we start conflicting times with days and that whole thing. So maybe we could have staff look at a suggestion of where that might be, or maybe even we set up this room just a tad different, and I don't know how that would work from using the audience there. So just a suggestion.
I would agree. I would personally, I'd like to see it left in this room. If it means putting up a different table scenario or something like that for URA meetings, which would cause a conflict with our council meetings. So it may have to be a different night, and I'd like to hear from Commissioner Tedesco and Timio, because they have obligations as well as to what days work better with their schedules, so we can do our best to accommodate them, because I know they also have meetings.
So if I may.
Yep, Mr. Archuleta.
Any night is fine for me except for Tuesday nights. Tuesday nights are Adams County 14 district meetings, so any other night would be fine. The earlier the better. I don't want to interfere with council business. You got very important jobs to do, so any night would be fine with me. Monday night would be okay.
Great.
4 o'clock, 5 o'clock would be fine.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tedesco?
Right on top somewhere there.
There you go.
All right, there we go. I'll use that one. He wasn't going to share it first. I'm crowding him out up here. So I would say this, that I agree with the time change. I think that being respectful for everybody's time and what they have in their obligations. I definitely don't want to be here until 1 o'clock in the morning. If you do, that's fine, but that's not my preference. Any day of the week is we can accommodate any day of the week. The location doesn't matter to me. We certainly offer any assistance with the county building, which is up off of 120th and Sable. So whatever we can do to be of assistance would be, just request it and we'll be there. We could move it back and forth or keep it in one place.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. I think that's great that at least we're open on some timing and location. So if staff will continue to try to research and figure out where the best place is and the best time. You already know what our schedules are. So you can come back with some recommendations, I think would probably be the best way to handle it.
I think that's excellent feedback. We can work with that. We can look at some alternatives and come back to you, but we'll sort of lean towards the Monday evening option prior to the council meetings. And we have ways of setting up this room where we can have a URA board meeting and get all of you around a table and then still conduct a council meeting at the dais. We've done similar things in this room, so we'll explore that, but we'll come up with some other options as well.
Right. Councilman Douglas, or Board Member Douglas, sorry.
Yes, I was thinking maybe because of our legislative meetings we have at 5 o'clock on Mondays, that the members are on that committee, maybe like a 4 o'clock time frame. Actually, we have to work and see, because we all have, most of us, daytime jobs. Maybe pick another day, or maybe our legislative meetings could be every other Monday, so we can accommodate the URA board meetings on the same Monday at 5 o'clock and just rotate legislative meetings. We can cut those down to 2 meetings a month instead of 4.
I'm sure staff will take that into account when they bring back some recommendations on timing. And we don't have URA meetings, every week. Sometimes we don't even have one in a month. All right, Councilwoman Elliott, or Board Member Elliott, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. And that was just my concern, as a matter of, I know that these aren't meetings that are going to be on a regular basis, but also to keep in mind, due to the nature of the topics that we're going to be discussing with our new board members, I really do feel it's important to have them in this room so that they are televised, so our residents at home can be updated with current events. That was it.
Thank you. Board Member Carson.
Well, I was just going to suggest that they're done on study nights. That way that if we did the URA first and it ran long, it really wouldn't affect that much.
Okay.
Good idea.
All right. So staff will take all that in consideration, come back, give us some possible solutions for times and how this will be set up. All right, Chris.
And if we do get down to a couple of options, we may send out some emails asking for some input. So I hope that's an okay format. Waiting until the next meeting presents some challenges when we know that the next meeting we need to have some decisions about how we're going to configure things. So at this point, we could spend 3 or 4 multiple hour sessions doing education overviews and orientation regarding urban renewal authorities for not only our new members, but everyone else too, for that matter. But knowing that we don't have that much time, we do have an opportunity to provide a high-level overview about a few aspects of the Urban Renewal Authority, especially how it relates to 1348 and roles and responsibilities. 1348 is a brand new world for everybody across the state. We're one of the first to be able to seat new board members according to those requirements. And to help us with that, we have solicited the help of outside counsel. Caitlin Quander with Brownstein, Hyatt, Schreck, and Farber. Is that right? Yeah, Farber and Schreck, that's it. I reversed those two. Has been working with us and has helped us throughout the Master Developer Agreement process, and then also through all those steps that you saw regarding the 1348 appointments. So because of her expertise with the new requirements and how it relates to roles and responsibility, we've asked her to come and give a really short overview about just a couple of elements of the Urban Renewal Authority for the board. So I will introduce Caitlin Quander now.
Good evening.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Welcome, new Commissioners. Again, my name is Caitlin Quander. I'm an attorney at Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, and we serve as special counsel to the Urban Renewal Authority. Thank you. So I do want to respect your time, but we are certainly here along with your counsel if you do want to dive any deeper on questions after this meeting or one-on-one to get a broader overview. As Chris suggested, we can talk for hours. So this is just a quick summary of kind of where we're at in the process right now. The Urban Renewal Authority is formed. This evening you updated your board membership for House Bill 1348 compliance. The next step is and this relates to the Mile High Greyhound Park specifically, but the next step is to conduct a condition survey. And this is underway by your Commerce City Planning Department. After that, the condition survey is prepared and an urban renewal plan is prepared along with an impact report, along with discussions with the different taxing bodies which would occur. And that leads up to hopefully a consideration by this body of the urban renewal plan in spring 2017. And then the next step is to implement that urban renewal plan. So very quickly, I'll just touch on some roles and responsibilities for the different parties that are all involved. City Council has its role. It, in fact, causes urban renewal plans and amendments to be prepared, approved, and implemented. So the Urban Renewal Authority actually recommends the plan to City Council, and then City Council is the body that approves the urban renewal plan eventually. City Council also has the power to acquire real property by eminent domain, if that is its will, and to enter into agreements with the Urban Renewal Authority. Then you have Planning Commission. Planning Commission, before the City Council reviews the Urban Renewal Plan, it reviews the Urban Renewal Plan solely for consistency with the Commerce City Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission also will consider and opine on the project itself as it goes underway, and that's really just part of its typical land use process. It reviews the project as it does any other project coming through. So the legal powers and responsibilities of the Urban Renewal Authority Board itself. I will not read all of these. I will just hit a couple of high points. I named earlier preparing the condition survey, preparing the urban renewal plan, and then the financing plan for the area and the presentation to City Council for that authorization. One of the greatest powers of an urban renewal authority is tax increment financing, and we can talk about that further if you'd like, but that is certainly one of the greatest powers and opportunities that urban renewal provides. Another is to enter into agreements to implement that urban renewal plan. That includes the acquisition of property. For example, the Mile High Greyhound Park is currently owned by the city and URA, and the reimbursement to a developer or a development agreement. So those are examples of circumstances the Urban Renewal Authority Board enters into those agreements. So other governance issues, just to highlight for you, this is a body that sits much like a Board of County Commissioner or a City Council or a school district board. So the Colorado Sunshine Act, this is the open meetings law, that applies here. So it is a public meeting. You have to do proper notices for that meeting to make sure that the public is aware. And the meetings rules about the number of people, of commissioners that get together at any one time, and the notice that's required applies here. Similarly, the Colorado Open Records Act applies, so just note that for all of your communications, subject to the same rules that you're familiar with under CORA. We often recommend an adoption of bylaws, although it's not required, and you in fact updated your bylaws this evening to make sure that they are correct and updated for your body. Some other adoption of other policies or form documents are suggested here, and I can touch on any of those if you'd like. This is really the focus of what I wanted to talk to you about here, because House Bill 1348 is an interesting world. So each board member's duties are to the Urban Renewal Authority and its purposes, policies, and goals pursuant to state law and its adopted plans. And that is a fiduciary responsibility, much like you have on your other boards. The conflict of interest provision in the Colorado State Statute for Urban Renewal Authorities does differ from what you are typically familiar with in your current positions as City Council, Board of County Commissioners, and school district. Typically, you see that as a financial benefit for you or your family member, pretty direct. Here, I will not read the giant statutory provision, but it is there if you want to read the whole thing. It's a bit more indirect. So you are not allowed to acquire any interest, direct or indirect. That could be a lease, for example, in any project or property included or planned to be included in any project or urban renewal plan area. So, if you're an active property owner or you're a retailer, we can talk about that. You can talk about it with your council. It's just something to be aware of as plans come forward if you're a property owner and you're owning more than your house most of the time. So the intent of House Bill 1348 is to expand the membership, and really the goal is to enhance your communications, to make sure that we're really taking all things into consideration as urban renewal plans are adopted. And hopefully the conversations will be enhanced because of that. That said, at the time that you actually do vote, you are voting as a member of the Urban Renewal Authority Board. And I'm sure you're all kind of familiar with this when you enter into IGAs, for example. I'm not sure if your City Council and Urban Renewal Authority have current IGAs. I don't know if you have any right now. But anyway, in that circumstance, your City Council, during your City Council meeting, you're wearing that hat. You vote as a City Council on that intergovernmental agreement. And then later, you're sitting as the Urban Renewal Authority Board, that hat goes on, and those are the interests that you're looking at. And it's the same circumstance in this case. For your discussion and conversations, having some of the perspectives from City Council, from the school district, from the county will be really helpful. But then when you come to the time that you're voting on the plan or you're voting on an agreement, you're wearing that authority hat. So I think with that, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions now or do so at the end. And as I offered, if something comes up later, we're happy to discuss further.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the Urban Renewal Authority Board for the attorney at this time? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, go ahead and continue.
So just a couple of other background perspectives on the Urban Renewal Authority, just for not only the new members' perspective, but everybody's perspective. We have 3 existing Urban Renewal Authority districts that are already approved, and I'm just going to use the mouse. You should be able to see this on your screen. We have the Parkway Urban Renewal Authority District. We have Derby and Victory Crossing. The hatched area is the Mile High Greyhound Park project that is, the process has begun. And so it is intended for this URA board to consider the adoption of a URA plan associated with this project early next year. And so with that in mind, we also thought tonight would be a good time to do an update regarding the ongoing project, the most active project we have with the Urban Renewal Authority. It's been a while since I was going to say the old-time members. That doesn't sound very good. The previously existing URA board members have had an update, but it's also then a good opportunity for the 2 new board members to get sort of an overview of what's going on with that project. So to help us with that, as background, the URA board signed a master developer agreement with Regen LLC, headed in principle by Rick Wells. And so he is the URA board's and the city's partner in this project. He is here tonight to give an update regarding where we're at with the plans and maybe a brief description about some of the results from the neighborhood meeting that occurred last night. I know many of you were there, so that's a chance for him to just maybe give you a little bit of update on that.
Welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's good to see you. It's nice to see the 2 new board members joining us here. So I want to go through.
That's right. Actually, I was going to do these slides.
Okay.
But just to throw you off, I
No problem.
brought you up here.
I was confused.
I'm just going to give you a few seconds background on the background of the project predating Rick. So, again, the site itself is 62nd to Holly, 64th over to State Highway 2. You can see the outline of the former track that's been demolished. And then we have Central Elementary to the northeast with residences surrounding it, retail to the south, and industrial across 685. I know everyone here remembers the Mile High Kennel Club opening in 1949, operating in various forms throughout its time as a greyhound racing operation. At its height in the 80s, it was receiving sometimes up to 10,000 people on a Friday and Saturday night. Those attendance numbers began to wane a little bit, and then by the 2000s, the attendance was far less. It closed its doors in 2008 and sat vacant for a few years until the URA purchased the property in August 2011. The primary reason for the URA purchasing that was so that it can be more in control over the outcome of this property, to be more of a master of its own fate. It has been the heartbeat and the central focus of this community for so long. The URA thought it was important to be a more active participant in what happens to that project. Recent history since the purchase of the property by the URA, there was some initial outreach without a developer partner, just by the URA board to get an idea about what kind of projects were wanted there. The demolition was actually begun in 2012, wrapping up in 2013 of the grandstand track and other facilities. There was a feasibility study funded through the grant of the Economic Development Authority by the federal government, looking at various economic feasibility products that might be able to be located on this project. It formed the backbone of an outreach that we did to try and find a master developer partner. So there was an RFP process, interviews, eventually ending up with a memorandum of understanding with Regen in May of 2014. Regen and the city then held their own public input meetings, building on what happened earlier in 2011. After some negotiation, then a master developer agreement that I've referred to was signed in April of 2016. And then in June, a more formal zoning process was initiated. So zoning is underway, which led to the neighborhood meeting referenced last week. That was last week. I mentioned earlier the feasibility study as a part of that and the outreach. There are 6 project goals that are outlined as a vision for this project. I do think it's important that I just touch on these real briefly. I know it's late, but first is a goal of creating a flexible master framework plan. Whatever it is, we need a vision so that it doesn't just go any old direction, but it does need to have some flexibility built in. Within that flexibility, the idea of creating a mixed use and a multi-use neighborhood, it is still that heart of the community, and a mixed use type of development would help continue that type of presence. Additionally, providing a variety of retail and commercial development options. There is not a desire for this to go all one direction, all residential, for example. That there is a strong desire to build on some of the other retail that already exists in the area and try and provide more opportunities for retail, sit-down restaurants, etc. Create a community destination and a sense of place. I mentioned the role that the project has played in the history of Commerce City, and there's a hope and a desire for that to maintain a certain role and a certain presence within the community. Goal 5, which is a success already, provides space for the Boys and Girls Club and other service organizations. Boys and Girls Club opened last year at the southeast corner of 62nd and Holly. And they are having tremendous success. The wait list for that facility is extremely long, which is a testament to how successful they've been. And then finally, one way that this project will be unique is to hold a portion of the property for an institutional anchor, education, training, et cetera, while pursuing development on the remainder of the property. So instead of just a typical commercial, retail, residential mixed use that we see in a lot of locations throughout the metro area, one of the key defining features is the presence of this institutional anchor to really help supplement and add on to a lot of the work that the school district does. Not everybody's going to go to college, and everybody understands that, but what else can we do? What other kinds of trade training, technical training can we provide to help Commerce City residents with their ongoing educational opportunities? The great part about that is it's a wonderful fit with a lot of our employers who are in need of trained labor. And so we're really able to help out multiple assets or multiple facets of our community through that particular portion of the vision. So this is, I should say I did it prematurely. This was the introduction slide for Rick Wells with Regen LLC. Sorry about that, Rick.
No problem. Thank you. Good to be here. Good to give you an update. We did have a public meeting, as Chris indicated. A number of you were there. Some representatives, some of the new board members were there from the city count, or excuse me, from the school district, and it went well. I thought I got a good reception. We got a lot of good feedback. We had an opportunity to explain in more detail what you're going to see tonight, and so there's more detail available certainly, but in the interest of time, we're not going to spend all that much on it. The main aspects of the development are still exactly the goals that Chris enumerated: a mixed-use, multi-purpose development using all 60 acres to bring in a variety of different housing types for sale, for rent, multifamily, seniors. Retail and commercial, we're looking for both a retail center, a more traditional retail center, as you might expect, and you'll see in the plans, and also some storefront retail that we can bring into the site. And then some truly mixed-use opportunities where we can mix in perhaps a hotel, commercial office space, that sort of stuff. So truly mixed-use, mixed income, different types of products. Training and education, we talked about that, is still a very prevalent part of the site, and we're going to move forward on that as we go on. Some of the more interesting parts of the site, as we've learned more over the last several months as we've been doing the engineering and design work on the site, are how the street patterns and some of the regional drainage and the parks and open space really have started to impact some of the design of the site. It hasn't changed the intent of the site. The intent really is the same as far as uses and what we want to have happen here. But it really does and has significantly impacted some of the site elements themselves. So this is a diagram we used at the public meeting to explain the different types of uses we're looking for on the site, and hopefully the colors are legible to you all. But basically on the northwest quadrant of the site, you can see where we've got the institutional and educational training quadrant isolated, so that we have that access to that site identified and understood as we develop the rest of the site. You'll note on that site, and as well as scattered throughout here, we've started to designate stormwater areas. So part of our engineering is working with your city engineers and our internal engineers, Kimley Horn, to start to define how the site itself handles its own stormwater. And the basic rule of thumb in this development is we have to handle all of the stormwater that we are generating on the site to a 100-year event storage. So we have to be able to contain and then release at a slower rate a 100-year event. I bring that up because it comes up when we start talking about the regional drainage. So the southwest quadrant is where we've identified a retail center, if you will. It's got the best visibility from Highway 2. As you would expect, it's got good access off of 62nd. It's got good access off of Highway 2 going north. You can get out of that part of the site going north and get onto Highway 2 and 685 going south, or you can go north, so it has good access going out of the site. And so we think having it in that quadrant gives it the best opportunity to be successful. It's got good visibility. It does isolate the traffic that's generated from that retail center from the rest of the project, so you don't have a lot of cut-through traffic being generated from one part of the site to another. And it does match it up. You can see there's an access point on the south side of the site there where we do match it up with, there's an access point on the King Super Shopping Center just to the south. So that's the retail center, and it'll make a little more sense when you see some of the buildings on it. Up on the north side of the site, we wanted to make sure that we're matching the usage up there, and we've identified that as single-family homes, either attached or detached. I think there's a good opportunity to have both, a duplex-type project or a single-family homes, or a mix of those two, typically alley-loaded with garages. And we really wanted to make a strong effort to make sure that we brought that single-family, lower-density use from the neighbors to the north into the project on that north edge to kind of protect that north edge, the neighbors that exist up there. As you move further south on the site, you start to pick up more density, so you can see the lighter orange, kind of almost Bronco orange areas there that we have described as townhomes, walk-up multifamily residential. So again, we're not looking for pure mixed use in there. We're really looking for more higher density, say a townhome product, a stacked row home type of a product, or perhaps a smaller multifamily project, a 2 or 3 story walk-up or flats, either for sale or for rent. I hope we can get some townhomes for rent going in there. I think that'd be a great product for this area. But a little lower density, but higher than the area to the north where we're trying to de-emphasize the density. And then you've got the darker orange, the burnt orange areas on the south and central part of the site surrounding what you see in the middle there as what we're proposing to be open space, both used as a park and also used as usable open space for stormwater. And I can get into that in a little more detail. But concentrate the density so that it has the least impact possible on the surrounding neighborhoods. The area to the south of this, where we're proposing more density, is primarily commercial. And on the interior of the site, you want to put that density around open space, the park, so you've got some nice open space for people who are living in a little more dense environment to have the opportunity to get outside. And when we're talking about higher density, just to be clear, we're proposing essentially a 5-story as the maximum height for a residential product. That's an important product type for a residential multifamily builder. It's a product type that's used a lot in Colorado based on the existing building laws. It's essentially a concrete podium with 4 stories of stick above it, so you can create either ground floor retail as an ideal use, and then residential product or commercial product above that. So that's kind of the maximum we're talking about in terms of residential density. I will say that a hotel, and we do think there's a good prospect for a hotel in that retail center portion of the site, will probably want to be, it could want to be as high as 6 stories, perhaps 8. I don't think it'll go to 8, but I think you could likely see a 6-story product in there. It's just a very efficient, you have to go to an elevated building when you build a hotel anyway, and so you want to kind of maximize your footprint using that hotel expense to the maximum benefit, and so typically a 6-story product is a good fit for that type of developer. So there may be some higher than 5-story stuff, but it's going to be the commercial and the hotel really is what we're looking at there. Let me go back and talk about the open spaces some more, and in particular how we are connecting the site with open spaces and what we're doing with the regional stormwater. And this is where we talked about one of the critical aspects, and that really is what to do with the regional stormwater pond. Currently, the pond is on and it will stay on the northeast quadrant of the site. It borders Holly, going all the way from the Boys and Girls Club up to 64th. The current size of that site is an acre plus of storage area. It's going to more than double in size, and this is where we reference back to the 100-year containment requirement. Strictly speaking, this doesn't have to be a 100-year containment area, but because you actually own it, you can to some extent make up your own rules about what you do with that. And just as a point of reference, this regional stormwater facility does not serve this site, okay? This regional stormwater facility serves about 400 acres that's to the south and to the east of this site. So the drainage is generally from southeast to northwest in this area. And so the drainage is coming from 400 acres off-site. It comes to this site. It stays for a little while in this storage facility, and then it goes off in a pipe going north along Holly Street, and it goes on to another containment area. The current volume of that existing stormwater facility is sized. It will hold approximately a 10-year event. So anything more than a 10-year flood event essentially goes over top and goes into the streets to the north of the development. It's not reasonable for us to sit here and say we shouldn't address that, we don't want to address that. We have to address that. I mean, you can't build this kind of a large new development and then tell the neighbors to the north, oh, by the way, since the city owned that pond, we weren't going to mess with it. We have to put it up to current standards, and so it is going to become a 100-year standard, just like the rest, just as if it were being built new. Now, the good news is we also want to take this opportunity to turn it from what it is now, which is essentially just a water storage facility with nothing, no amenities, no nothing, into something that can be used to some extent, softened around the edges so that it can be a walkable environment. People can walk by it. There is still going to be a very large storage volume in there that will be unusable. It's going to have water in it. It's going to be wet virtually all the time. You've seen it. It'll have reeds in the bottom. It'll be nicely landscaped. It will look much better than the one now, but it will be more than twice the size of the one that is there now Fortunately, it's not linear. You don't have to go 10 times the size to get from a 10-year event to a 100-year event. We only have to a little more than double the size of that pond. That then, though, does start to define the road pattern and the connectivity pattern in this area. And in particular, we had to create this whole area here. And rather than just leave it all as unusable space, we really wanted to soften the edge here along the western portion of it and start to bring it back up to a slope where we can put some picnic tables, a volleyball court, some sort of an active use, and start to turn it into park space as it gets up there. We are also, as part of providing a development like this, we have to provide open space for all the new development. And we're doing that on the central park portion of the site in the middle there. And the idea is to connect those two with a green space so that we create a nice walkable green environment. One of the issues we ran into when we did this green space, and it was pointed out to us by one of our potential development partners, was we did lose a lot of street space in there. So we actually replaced 63rd in there. Rather than having 63rd go through the site, we put a new road going north and south, dividing that area, which is actually longer than 63rd was going to be. So we more than replaced 63rd in terms of street length, which is important because street parking is important in any residential area. And so we've got a longer street, but we've reoriented it from going east-west to going north-south. And so that's one of the compromises we had to make. And this is where we can talk about connectivity. Right now, at this point, the Parkway Drive is scheduled to go through the site. There's a light, as you know, at 62nd of Parkway. Feedback we got from the first public meeting we did 2 years ago was strongly in favor of Parkway connecting through the site. Interestingly enough, we had our public meeting 2 weeks ago, a week ago, and did get some feedback about people being concerned about Parkway going through the site. So you talk to one public meeting, they want it. You talk to another, you get some feedback, they don't want it. I think most of the concern, I know from talking to the people that were there, the residents that were most concerned about it actually lived on Glencoe, which is the street that goes north from where Parkway Drive would terminate and turn into Glencoe. And they were concerned about cut-through traffic. And that's not surprising. It's understandable. It's your neighborhood. You don't want more cars going down your street. And so we talked a lot about what could be done. I understand there are speed bumps there now, but perhaps there are mitigation measures that we can look at as a team to look and see how we can make sure that we are mitigating any impact of Parkway being connected up to 64th. I will say that it is critical that we do have a usable north-south connection going through the site like that. From a planning and from a public works perspective, your public works team would tell you it's critical. We do have another north-south road going through the site, and that's approximately on the alignment of Fairfax. And again, we think that's critical because it starts to divide the uses between a mixed-use environment and a retail and training environment. Creating an east-west connection through the site is more difficult. We have a hard location at 63rd on the west edge where we have to connect to Highway 2. We really cannot change that. It is a state highway access point. Those are not easy to change, and we would not suggest that we try and change that. So you bring 63rd into the site, and then you have to decide where do you want to stop it. Again, we had to put stormwater in the site. We're trying to incorporate it with the connected green spaces as well as we can. So we stopped it at the park to let traffic go around that park and then back out the site to the extent it wants to. And then we also decided to go ahead and connect it down, and we're going to be talking to the Boys and Girls Club about going ahead and connecting over to Holly Street on what would be about 62nd and a half. The problem is you can't put 63rd all the way through the site. Why can't you? And it's because of the regional stormwater pond on the east edge of the site. You couldn't effectively build a road going through the middle of that regional stormwater pond without making it much larger. You'd be building a road up on a dike, and you'd be wasting all of that volume that you just went to all the expense to build. And so 63rd really cannot go through the site. So it really just becomes a question of where do you stop 63rd. So this is, we think, a pattern that starts to help match up where the streets align with the existing streets, gives us sufficient street frontage in the development itself to accommodate street parking at a fairly high level. The green spaces, the connections that you see here, are new. We wanted to keep the grid the same on some of these connection points as you would in a standard city street. And I'll give you the best example that you can find it, and it's right down the street. It's in some of the new development that's going on in Northfield and Stapleton. And these are being used quite effectively, quite nicely. They're nice landscape strips so that people from the surrounding neighborhoods can feel comfortable crossing 64th and walking through the project to get to the King Soopers or get to the park or get to wherever they want to go. So that's kind of the basic layout of how the site looks. The next slide gives you kind of a visual feel of what it might look like for if you put buildings on it. The one thing I can guarantee, and I say this in every meeting, it will not look like this. This is representational. It's a good guess, but the one thing you can't commit to is that every building will be in exactly this location at exactly this density. We're going through the zoning process to start to define where those densities are and where they lie and how they interact with the street. We'll have design guidelines that regulate the quality of those buildings and how they interact with the public and with the rest of the area, but you can't define specific buildings. But you can see the idea. We've got the retail center here on the southwest quadrant, a couple of 20,000 square foot retail buildings right there against the southwest corner. The purple is what we would propose to be a hotel site. Gets good visibility from Highway 2 and starts to bring some energy to that corner there on 63rd. The educational campus, representational buildings again, but that is approximately the way you would look at the parking ratios for about a 40,000 to 50,000 square foot center up there. So it gives you an idea of the dimensionality, parking versus square footage of buildings. Same thing with the retail center. The single-family homes up on the north, again, we're looking for alley-loaded, two-car garages, single families, either connected or single-family detached, and then higher density as you move further to the south with the opportunity, and really this gets back to the zoning, we really wanted to make sure that where we've got that burnt orange on the south quadrant and then the central part of that site, that we give ourselves the most flexibility because we are looking for mixed use. That will give us the opportunity to have some buildings in there potentially, let's say, along 63rd, where you might say rather than do a residential product right here along 63rd, those buildings could be commercial. They could be an office building mixed in with a retail building. And so you really want that mixed use opportunity, we think, most intelligently right here along this portion of the site where it interacts with the commercial to the south, and you've got access along Parkway Drive. Again, trying to separate some of the uses to some extent between residential and commercial, but still create a nice mixed-use, active environment. This is a bird's eye view. It's amazing what they can do with computer graphics. This is essentially they put buildings in there, and then we can do it sometime if you want in another meeting. But you can fly around the site. You can see what it looks like from different angles, from different dimensions. And it just starts to give you a bit of a feel for the scale of the site and the relative densities from one portion of the site to the next. We talked in the meeting about the importance of bringing some aspect of the history of the Greyhound Park into the site. We don't have a specific plan at this point, but we'll be talking to the Historical Society, we'll be talking to the neighbors, we'll be talking to all of you about ideas about how we do that. One of them, simply, quite frankly, could be branding. I do, in fact, like the name of the Greyhound Park. I'm not saying we're going to go that way, but I think every site, my personal opinion is that there's nothing wrong with having a good name, and I like the Greyhound Park. I mean, it says something about what it used to be, and it says something about being a healthy, living, open environment, a park. It just starts to speak to active, and it really kind of ties the two pieces together. We'll see if that sticks. We haven't decided on that yet, but we do want to make sure that we do connect both the old and the new in this development. We talked at the public meeting about the size of the project, what it looks like, $12 to $14 million worth of infrastructure costs, roads, water, sewer, stormwater, open spaces, bringing in dry utilities. Soft costs against that, approximately 10%, $1.5 million is what we've got in there right now. We've split the investment between the regional stormwater facility, having the city invest in that asset because it really is a city asset, not germane exactly to this site. And then the rest of the funding is what I'll put together, putting in private funding sources to bring the rest of the site infrastructure. that site infrastructure is paid back through tax increment financing. So we've talked about this before as we went through the development agreement. This site has no usable infrastructure on it. There's nothing on that site that can be reused. There's a lonely fire hydrant right in the middle of it, and we can't reuse it. It's too old. And so everything needs to be built new. It's expensive, and what pays for that is property tax increment and sales tax increment. And so we do need a healthy dose of property tax to make this development work. And that's something we'll get into as we get into the urban renewal plan as to how that gets done. City investor financing repays with over the 25-year life of the urban renewal plan. And again, we emphasize to the neighbors, this is not putting a new tax. It's not a metro district. It's not a new tax that spreads itself out beyond the borders of this development. And in fact, it's not a new tax on this development. Anybody who's doing business here, whether it's a hotel paying sales tax or whether it's a resident paying property tax, pays exactly the same property tax rate or exactly the same sales tax rate as they do across the street. No new districts. It's just using the existing taxing authority and putting it into the urban renewal development. Where we're at with marketing, we did do a solicitation at the recommendation of the city's urban renewal lawyer to do an open solicitation. We put an ad in the Commerce City Sentinel, and Del West, there's a representative here today, answered that. They did a great job. They put together a nice proposal, multi-phase purchase proposal. The problem with it is it was very detailed. I don't want to throw them under the bus and say it wasn't a good proposal. It was an excellent proposal. The problem is there's already aspects of it now that, because of what we've already learned about the stormwater facility, how large it needs to be, what the project densities need to be, that are outdated. So lack of detail was not lack of effort. They did a great proposal. It's just you can't pick that up and say, okay, I'm ready to sign this, let's go. There's already aspects of the proposal that we're going to be working through with that proposer. In fact, I have a meeting with them on Wednesday, and we're going to be working through how does that actually work given what we know about the site now and how we want to design the site. So it was a good proposal, and we're working with them as one of the people that are interested in the site. As you might expect, as we've had public meetings, as people get interested in the site based on what they hear about it, I'm getting interest from other parties, and there are multiple parties that are interested and are in various stages of looking at the site for both a multifamily rental, attached and detached single-family homes, and active seniors. So all of the major product categories we talked about I am in various stages of discussion with multiple providers of those types of products. On the retail side, I am going to sign up. I've talked with the city staff about it. They said that they thought it was a good idea. Phil Hicks is a retail and commercial broker that works in the Denver metro area primarily. I worked with them before. They're a good retail broker, and I'm excited to start working with them as a retail and commercial broker for the site. And as it happens, it wasn't a coincidence. It was partly by plan. They also have a hotel, extended stay hotel client who is interested in putting an LOI on the site to build that hotel project. So they'll be bringing that opportunity with them as we sign them up. What's next on the schedule? We're doing concept site planning and engineering. We had our public meeting. We are headed towards a PUD zoning plan. So you're going to see this as a city council, not as the Urban Renewal Authority. We're hoping the first reading in December. That's really an important date for us so we don't get caught up in all the holiday schedule and start missing meetings in December and January. We really want to get that done in that meeting in December so we don't get messed up on schedule. At that same meeting, the Urban Renewal Authority, so you have to take your one hat off, you put your other hat on. The Urban Renewal Authority, we're hoping we'll get to look at the Urban Renewal Plan and approve that. So what we're aiming for is to have both the zoning looked at in December by the City Council and the Urban Renewal Plan looked at in December by the board. And so that's our target. That puts us on track then to get through the next part of the zoning process, which is more detailed design guidelines, more detail on street sections, park design, stormwater open space design. We're doing some of that now in anticipation of getting that zoning, but we have to complete that process. That process takes us through, let's call it, middle of 2017. In the meantime, I'll be signing up a developer who will also be working, hopefully, on their plan to start putting that into the zoning process, to start the permitting process, so that I can start building infrastructure in the fall of next year, and then hopefully follow right on with a vertical development following that immediately. And so looking for hopefully a first product opening in late 2018. I still think at this point the market says it's likely to be a multifamily rental project. I think we can get a single family attached or detached builder going at the same time. So I'd like to think we can get two products going at the same time with fall of 2018. Long-term build-out, nothing's changed my view. We'll go through at least one real estate cycle between now and then, and so it will take multi-years to get it built out, but I'm excited about the plan. I have to say, I think it's come together really well. RNL's the planner, Kimley Horn's the engineer. We've been having regular weekly meetings amongst ourselves and with the staff, and I think we're making good progress on the zoning. You'll start to see the results of that here fairly soon, and I think you'll be pleased with it. So we're excited about where we're at. We're excited about the response the project's getting in the development community, and looking forward to moving through the next phases. And that's it.
And if I could just add one thing to the schedule slide, I'm sorry to jump in here. It's listed on here. The one element of this that might represent a challenge to the schedule is the required, House Bill 1348 required IGAs with the taxing entities. It could be an IGA or an agreement, or there's a variety of ways we could do it, but we do have to basically negotiate with all those entities prior to the approval of the urban renewal plan. And the House Bill 1348 outlines a process that if you can't reach that agreement, you have to go through a required mediation. And if that happens, the schedule for the urban renewal plans is pushed back, honestly, till the summer. It has set timelines in the state statute that require a set process that pushes that out quite a bit of time. So we are very cognizant of that particular impact to the overall schedule, because it blows it out of the water, frankly. So we are going to be beginning those conversations relatively soon with those taxing entities.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Rick. And I'm going to ask the board if they have any questions pertaining to the development. Mr. Teeter?
Thanks for the presentation tonight. I was just kind of curious of how many citizens have been coming out so far, just a rough figure.
Oh, I want to think there was 25, 30, plus or minus, I think. We're at the meeting last week. And I think the first one, it was maybe a little more, maybe 35. But that's, it's a good crowd. And I'll tell you, the one thing was they were all neighbors. I mean, they were all people who live right there. Last one, we got a little more broader look at it. But this time, I mean, in talking to all of them, for the most part, not everybody, but for the most part, they were people who lived there, which was really great. I mean, it's nice to hear from people who, you kind of think, you get in the mindset that you do a traffic planning study, so you know all about the traffic. You don't know diddly about the traffic until you talk to the guy who lives on Glencoe. I mean, really, that's the kind of feedback you get that you can't get from anybody else.
Mr. Amador.
In slide 24, the kind of master plan that we have, the proposed site plan, yeah, that one. Go back one, that one.
Uh-huh.
Approximately how many residential units is this pro forma working out to be?
Yeah, right now, if you were to get to a 5-story product on the buildings that are shown in the darker orange there around the park, you'd be somewhere around 800 residential units. I got to be honest, I don't think the economics of the site support 5-story product. I know they, back up. The economics of the site do not justify 5 stories today. I want to zone it so that we can get to 5 stories, because it is a very economical building form if the land prices are high enough to justify going to 5 stories. The rents right now don't support it. And so I would say a more realistic density is going to be more like 500 residential units. So I'm going to say a range 5 to 8 would be about where it comes out.
Very good. And then how many phases are we thinking at this time? So I know we've talked as the board moving from the east to the west, and then I kind of see this going on, and so just a rough guesstimate of phases.
Boy, that's a tough one. I would say 1, 2, 3, 5 to 6 is probably realistic. I think you're going to get overlap between some of the. I'm really excited about the opportunity to get a hotel here. I think that's realistic, and I really want to push that. So that would be overlap between some of the phases, so if you want to call it that. And I really think we can get both a single-family for-sale builder going at the same time as we're doing a multifamily affordable. So it depends upon how you define those as phases, right? But I'd say 4 to 5 overlapping phases, maybe 5 or 6.
And then I heard you speak a little bit about the commercial that has to happen there, and really, starting that TIF clock and what that needs to start that clock and start collecting those, we'll call it TIFs.
Yes.
Percentages.
Yes.
Yeah, the TIF.
Uh-huh.
In that phase, how are we anticipating, it's more of a general question because we don't know, and this is more of an economic development deal, along where the items are red in here.
Uh-huh.
We know that there are some challenges with the commercial spaces right adjacent to this.
Yes.
And so on those challenges, how are we looking at possibly solving that with a TIF? Because
yeah, I mean, the commercial to the south has had its challenges. You're talking about the King Super Center and that. Yeah, there's some empty spaces still, in particular in the development to the south of the King Supers. Most of the stuff in the King Super Center, except for the one in the northwest corner, are full. It's a chicken and egg that's tough to solve. Part of it comes with building a new project. Retailers like to have new rather than old, so you get some of it just based on the newness factor. Quite frankly, the bulk of the retail interest is going to come from new residents. It's going to come from increased density of residential, people who can walk to restaurants, people who are there and are bringing new money into the area. And so it gets to be kind of a chicken and egg formula. Which comes first, the retail or the residential? And hopefully you can do both at the same time intelligently. But there definitely is a feed of the retail off of new residential. And I think you're going to have both components to make both successful.
And so I have to throw a plug for the former council member, Dominic Moreno, whose mother really likes Applebee's and wants an Applebee's here.
Yeah.
And so that's been since 2012.
And we didn't put a label on it because we don't want to make anybody mad. But you can see these 2 pads right here that Chris and I are pointing out. Those really are intended to be restaurant pads. And so I talked to the brokers. I'm ready to sign them. Anybody else, unless you've had a bad experience with Phil Hicks, I'm going to sign them. They're excited to market those 2 pads early. In fact, they believe that there is the potential to bring a sit-down restaurant, something like a Chili's or an Applebee's or something, whatever, pick your flavor, but something like that to this market at that corner. Okay. The rest of the retail, you can imagine the 2 boxes down here, and those are just representative boxes. Those are 2 20,000 square foot floor plates, and just thinking size-wise, you have it in your brain. It's like a Kohl's. A typical Kohl's is about a 20,000 square foot floor plate. Those are going to be slower to follow because there isn't as strong of a retail demand out here, and quite frankly, because of the site access issues. Because you cannot make a left turn from your high visibility, high traffic roads, which is Highway 2 and Highway 6 and 85. That's what the retailers like. What they don't like is you can't turn immediately in there. Remember, it's see it, drive it, buy it. They can see it, If they can't drive intuitively to the site, it makes it more difficult for retail to be successful there. So I think that corner, while it has great visibility, is going to be tougher to fill just because it's going to want more activity in the area. Maybe we get lucky. Maybe we find somebody early. You know, we're going to be opportunistic. If we find somebody, we'll take it, as long as it's a good use. But that's, from talking to the retail guys, they think that's a little bit slower to come. So they're looking for restaurant, sit-down restaurant, fast casual. Still, I read an article in the Denver Post the other day on the imminent death of sit-down restaurants because nobody takes the time to sit down and eat anymore. But, you know, I think that type of a product's important out here, and we're certainly going to target it. Did I answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. McEldowney.
Rick, thanks for the update tonight. Just kind of building on Councilman Amador's questions, when I look at the site, one of the things we've talked about in the past has been access, and you kind of touched on it, the inability to turn left off of Highway 2. And when you look at your picture, or you look at Google Maps, I mean, we're limited southbound to the center of that property, right? In terms of, what is it,
62nd on the south, 64th on the north.
Well, you're the dead middle of this property between your
63rd,
right, 63rd, right?
That access right there. Yeah.
Have you looked at all what it would take or what the benefit would be of trying to add some road width to bring that stretch of road southbound so that you could get all the way to 62nd?
We have looked at that and do not think it's feasible for a couple reasons. One is a state highway, and so you're going to ask CDOT to rearrange Highway 2, which isn't a good bet in terms of realistically being able to do that because it's one way from 62nd going up to 63rd. It's essentially the new entrance to Highway 2. It's the entrance to Highway 2 off of where it splits. I have to say I don't think it's economically feasible based on the densities that we've got here. Your traffic studies have looked at that intersection, and it's a number that's in the tens of millions of dollars to fix that.
Okay.
And it just doesn't. It isn't something that this project by itself can
Certainly
economically
not with that
justify.
number. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It would be the first thing we would do if we can figure out how to do it. I mean, we've sat in planning meetings, we've talked about this, and if we can figure out how to make that one connection from 63rd down to 62nd on Dahlia, that's our first priority in terms of an external change on the grid.
It just seems like a key domino.
It would be important if we could get it. It would definitely help the retail piece of the puzzle. From a site accessibility perspective. From inside the site, there's nowhere you can't get easier. In other words, going up to 64th, you can go either direction, north or south, right? So you go to 64th, you go to the end, you go either north or south. So that's the primary ingress-egress path for anybody who's on the north side of the site. On the south side of the site, you can go north from 62nd, you can't go south, but you go down Parkway Drive, but you're at the same place. And so the traffic studies will tell you that this is efficient and that there shouldn't be any reason why people can't move through the site, or shouldn't be any big reason why people should want to cut through the neighborhoods, because quite frankly, you really can't get anywhere on Glencoe that you can't already get on 64th.
Right.
That's not to say people won't try, and I'm not going to say there won't be some increased traffic on Glencoe, and that's why I think we do need to think about how do we make sure that we protect those neighborhoods appropriately. But that's a tough question. You know, I wish I had a better answer for you.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Carson, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I was just wondering, like when we're talking about single-family homes or the townhomes, would that be one builder so that there's some continuity? Or in the single-family homes, it makes sense to me that it would, but when I'm looking at these walk-up and they're placed in different parts,
Yes.
would that be one builder that would come in?
It could be, potentially. I mean, it would have to be a builder who's willing to go over multiple phases and build multiple products. Having said that, there aren't a lot of those builders around. There are some. Even if it's one builder, we would require in the design guidelines a certain diversity of architectural type so that we don't end up with the same buildings looking at each
Right.
other from both sides of the street. That's
Okay.
not really what you want. You really want, you want some consistency in how the buildings address the street, setbacks, heights, densities. You don't want a rigid consistency about the architecture, right? And because it's just not, it's not real. The real cities aren't built with the same building one after the other, right? They're built over time. They're built with different building types, with different architects. And so you really want that type of diversity. And so even if it were one builder, we would require a certain diversity of architecture and product type in order to get the kind of environment that we want.
Okay, thank you.
Is that
Yep, it did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up on that, Board Member Carson, there were some questions about that at the neighborhood meeting specifically. If you're familiar, in Stapleton, there's a requirement that they actually require a diversity of builders. So they actually ensure that they actually don't want for it to all be one builder.
Right.
We are not contemplating that for this project. If we can find a builder who meets the vision and wants to do a high quality project, I think both sides are interested and open to those conversations. So we will not be following. That was the question posed to us: is what we doing what Stapleton did? Maybe if that's what the market demands, but we won't require it like Stapleton does.
Mr. Douglas.
Yes. When we talk about zoning and land development code, are we going to talk about some of these buildings are EV ready?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I think it's a good product type, and it is something that adds a little cost to the building. But the type of urban, walkable environment you are looking at here is going to attract electric vehicle users. And so, yeah, it's certainly a part of the product type that we're going to want to promote.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Amador.
Thank you again. So in slide 27, we talk about project infrastructure hard costs. And
Okay.
in my mind, that first bullet point sticks in my mind at $8 million cost that we've been talking about. And so this is the first time that I'm kind of seeing 12 to 14 million. And how is that shared or kind of broken up? Because I'm finding a gap in my mind about what we've seen before for those infrastructure costs.
I'd have to go back and look at the old slides. I mean, that is a current estimate based on what we see here in terms of the road network and the open space. The split between, you mean like roads, water, sewers, and all that sort of stuff? I mean, I don't have it in my head. I can provide it to you.
Well, I know when we talked in the past, there was a need to fill a gap for the infrastructure to make this perform a work with the MDA.
Right.
And so I guess maybe we don't have to answer it right now, but
Yeah,
when
I've run this against the development plan that you see there, and it does work. It still, the performance still works pretty much the same as what we had before. It is slightly more dense than what we had before, but not much.
So let me ask it a different way. The city is helping out with the infrastructure piece, and what is the impact to the infrastructure, or is that infrastructure all the way bared the cost of the master developer?
Yeah, we're asking for the city to pay for the regional stormwater pond upgrades.
Okay.
And that piece of it has not yet been priced. In fact, what the engineers are doing literally right now is going through some alternative designs for that facility so we can get some representative pricing, so we can answer that question, but I don't want to put a number out in public right now because it's going to be wrong.
Very good.
I just can't tell you right now.
Okay.
It's not half, it's not a quarter, it's less than a quarter, it's probably less than $3 million, but it's bigger than $1 million. That's a pretty wide range, but I don't want to tie it down until we get closer.
Thank you.
Board Member Amador, if I,
You may.
Mr. Chair, yeah. The $12 million number has been pretty consistent in the pro formas that we've been providing. There is an $8 million figure, though, that has been, it's really the accumulation of the loans from the city to the URA board, plus the regional drainage, which has been slightly over $8 million, which is what we've been informing the board about recently. That might be the number that is sticking in your mind, and that's still, it might be more than 8.5 slightly, but that's still right in line with what the numbers are showing right now. So the infrastructure costs that Regen is picking up have been pretty consistent with 12 million. And then I think Jim Hayes used to refer it as the city's nut to crack, right? That's the 8.5 million that we've been hearing about. And that is, we don't have an exact number yet, but it's going to be somewhere around there.
Yeah, and I do include that city portion in the total cost. So there's a, I don't want to say double counting, but in the total cost is included that portion which the city would have to pay for the stormwater piece of it. And I think it's pretty consistent with what we've used, but I'll check and make sure.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions from the Urban Renewal Authority Board? Well, we have Rick here and our staff. Saying none, thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
All right, do you have anything further to present? Okay.
That's all we have for the URA meeting.
All right, I'd just like to say welcome to the new board members. We will get the time nailed down and how we're going to meet. But if there be no further business to come before the Urban Renewal Authority Board this evening, we will adjourn. Have a good night, everyone.